Well, welcome to the Change Energizer Hot Seat Podcast, the place where leaders are dropped into the hot seat to open up about high-stake wins and reveal the trust X factor behind their triumphs. I'm your host, Scott Carley, the Trust Energizer, and I believe the confidence people have in the way they show up, their character and their expertise is a real game changer. When trust is high, teams don't just perform, they pull off legendary Super Bowl wins. Today, our guest is Steve Harper from Ripple Central, Austin, Texas. You call Steve when you want to grow through the power of building better connections. So welcome to the show, Steve.
Well, I appreciate the invitation to be here. Now, first and foremost, I don't think you called it the hot seat when you invited me, so now I'm a little nervous. I was perfectly calm, ready to roll, but now the seat is feeling a little hot. But no, I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
We love the tension, we love the tension. And any of us, but we love the tension.
Well, I love the opportunity anytime I get a chance to talk about what I'm passionate about, which is helping people better connect, build better, more authentic relationships, and just how important that is to us both personally from a personal and professional success perspective, but also for organizations that are really trying to grow and really delight their clients and customers that they serve. And so this is anytime I get an opportunity to talk about how the Ripple can make an impact or a positive impact there, I'm all up for it.
Yeah, absolutely. You even wrote a book about this. Tell us about your book.
I wrote a book called The Ripple Effect, Maximizing the Power of Relationships for Your Life and Business. It came out literally September is going to be year 20. And it's kind of shocking. It's in its third edition. When I first brought it out, it was just like 156 pages, this little really horribly designed cover. And it was my offering to the world. I thought I was going to maybe sell 200 copies and then my dad would buy the rest of the inventory. What actually transpired is that little book opened so many doors and so many opportunities for me that people always ask me, when are you going to write another book? And it's like, I have a couple that I've got that are almost done, but the ripple just keeps rippling, right? So the book was really kind of a labor of love. It was really designed to help people understand that, success in life, in your work, in your growth as an entrepreneur, building a business, everything comes down to your ability to connect and engage with other people and build authentic, truthful relationships. You talk about the trust factor, right? You don't get there if you don't have trust and you're not able to establish that. And what I found way back when in 20 years ago, before the advent of social networks, is the only, way that you could trust somebody when you were connecting with them in a networking situation was to dig beyond that 30-second elevator pitch, right? Not just take their business card, not just share yours, but actually get into true, authentic conversation.
Oh, no. We have to do everything in that, 1 hour networking event. I've got to know all of your history, what you're good at, what you're bad at, what your prices are. It's all got to happen right there.
Yeah, doesn't work that way. And it didn't work back then, and it's even more difficult now. You'd think in today's world, and I think why the book is even more relevant today than it was even 20 years ago is that with social platforms that we have, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of them. But really, at the end of the day, we're more connected than we ever have been as a society. And yet there's statistics and studies that have shown that we're actually more isolated than we ever have been. And part of the reason is that we're really good at, doing the thumbs up or the likes or the hearts on these platforms. We don't know how to have an authentic conversation with another human being, whether it be in a 2D world like we're doing now via Zoom or at a networking event, or just going and calling on a prospective client for the first time. Being able to actually have that conversation has proven to be a challenge. And so my work is actually more in demand today than it ever has been, which I'm very grateful for.
Oh, yeah. And to compound that, now AI writes all my responses for me. I don't really have to think through what I'm going to say to you or how I'm going to communicate with you. I just throw it into AI and it comes with an answer that may or may not be me. How's that working?
Well, AI is a wonderful tool, but if you really want to make an indelible mark on somebody in their heart and in their head, it's probably not the best tool to use, right? It's not the one that I would suggest. There's certainly applications to help streamline certain aspects of what you do day to day. And I would definitely not take away from that because I'm utilizing it in as many capacities as I can. But, connection is a contact sport and you can't outsource it. And you have to be willing to roll up your sleeves and get to know the people that are important to you. And you can't farm that out to technology. And I don't think AI is ever going to replace that. I think it can be a great prep tool. I think I've seen and have used in a couple of examples in my trainings how you can utilize AI to actually throw certain scenarios at you or certain conversation opportunities and where you take it and how you take it. Really, at that point, it's just a practice dummy for you in terms of how you can prep and prepare. But it certainly could be a benefit there. But you simply can't do what we're doing right here through an AI bot or some sort of agent. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, I completely agree 100%. I'm a little bit of an extrovert, so I like to get out and meet people. But even I use things to help me start conversations or whatever,
Yeah.
just to be able to create the real human interaction. I know that there are some people out right now. Tom Singer's been doing a big thing about, human interaction and, how did you interact with a human today? I really love that. But I also remember something that you've done periodically. And I'll just tell you, Steve, I really loved it. And that was every day you would put out something about the ripple effect. And who have you created a ripple with and affected? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the thing about the human connection piece, I've been talking about that for years, is that it is very much a contact sport. You have to go outside of the normal process in order to make an impression on somebody. And just because you did it once doesn't mean that that's a lasting impression. You actually have to continually invest in the time, your time and your effort towards really continuing to get to know the people that are most important to you. That's true whether you're building a personal or your professional network. But one of the things that I always try to remind people through this countdown, we do a countdown on Twitter or X or whatever the heck Elon's calling it today, right? We've done it for years, and I do it as just a daily reminder that you have today. That's the only thing that you have in front of you. And you have the ability to determine whether you're going to make positive ripples out there or negative ripples. A ripple, in my sort of lizard brain explanation, is really any action, big or small, that you take that makes an impact on another person. And obviously, when you look for ways to do that, you're looking for opportunities to not only engage that person in conversation, but also find ways to support them and help them. And the only way that you actually get there, and to use your terminology, right, is that you've got to lay those deposits down so that people actually have rapport and then trust. And so my model is fairly simple, right? You have acquaintances, people that you meet at networking events. You might get their business card. You might know a little bit about them, but you probably wouldn't trust them to watch your dog over the weekend, right? And then you move towards a connection. A connection is we found something in common. You and I, when we first connected, we both have a passion for speaking. You're exceptionally great at it, and I am in awe of somebody like you that is exceptionally good at it. So I want to be around that enthusiasm and that energy. But even that connection has a different layer, right? Once you start investing in that person, you start coming back to them like, hey, Scott, I remember one thing you shared with me in a conversation. I want to dig into that the next time we get together. Or, hey, your story that you told, really made me think of something. And it made me want to reach out to this former colleague I worked with. Those little things that happen, those little magic moments, I call those connection points, these things that make that person unique and different to you, and really creates and sort of tugs on our explorer heart to want to continue to get to know that person. So you move beyond just a connection into a trusted connection, and then a trusted connection develops into a relationship. Well, so one example I would give is actually when you've built a relationship of real value, especially with your clients. I had a situation with my software company. We've got a recertification that's happening with a big school district in the Houston area. And one of the things that they asked for was, hey, we've done business with you before, but we need to get 3 additional references just to check the box. So they sent me this Google Doc form, right? Couldn't fill it out. I couldn't send names, which is typically what we do. I actually have to have one of my other clients actually fill this out. So I reached out to 3 of my top, clients in the school district space, not because they're they know this district, or because they can, grease the wheels for me, so to speak, but because they are legitimately three people that I know that truly appreciate what we do, how we do it, why we do it, but they all buy into the Ripple concept for me as well. And so they've become really close personal friends. So I reached out and said, hey, I know this is a minor inconvenience. It's going to take 2 minutes, but they need to actually hear directly from you. Not only did everybody respond immediately, they said, we're doing it. I also got responses the minute they finished and said, we're done. And we are happy to do it because we love you. We love what you do. We love how you support us. And it made me feel like $1,000,000, right? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you do in life or in your career. If people only look at you as your job function, or they only look at you for the product or service you offer, they don't actually have that personal connection to you, especially as the CEO or leader of the organization. Um, it, it, it's transactional, and I'm about relational, right? I'm about building relationships and adding value when and where I could. Did I expect anybody to say no, they wouldn't do it? No, of course not. But at the end of the day, to get a response back with such appreciation and enthusiasm, just the fact I got them to do it was great. But the fact that they all responded in kind like they did today just made me feel amazing, because it shows that everything that we've done in terms of laying the groundwork, building the relationship, that's when you know it's paid off. And so, I think when I look at the concept that I talk about with Ripple, how I utilize it in my other business and how it's part of our DNA and how we leverage it in such a capacity, this is differentiates us in such a big way from our competition, because people know we're not just selling them a product or a service. They are getting the people that really care about them and what's important to them, their teams, their business.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that story. I really like what you said, that there are different levels of relationships and different depths of relationships, and you figure that out, and you look for opportunities to take some relationships deeper and deeper and deeper, and other people are trying to take them deeper, so that we can move away from transactional stuff.
Yep.
I like that you recognize that, and gave our audience a way to understand part of what's going on. So,
Well,
uh,
and I think just, one thing to throw out there, because it really does support the great work that you do, is really what I think most people think about building like a network, right? My business network, my personal network. I get looked at as a networking expert, and I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. I hate networking. It is the most uncomfortable, frustrating experience, because often in networking environments, you have people that are so focused on what's in it for them that they're not coming to the table with the right motivations and the right mindset. My commitment has always been, how do I figure out how to build great connections with people and develop what I would call, to use your terminology, my own trust tribe, right? People that I know, not only when I have a request or a need, will return my call, or will respond in kind, but people that would be there for me in a pinch. And the reason that they will is because I've demonstrated that I will be there for them first. And that's really where I think the big challenge is. You have people out there that talk about networking and human connection and do all these things, and then you look at the quality of the network that they have, and you wonder, like, well, okay, is this just to grow your business? Is it just, is it completely with selfish motivations? I call those folks the power networkers, because it's all about transaction. It's all about numbers, and they don't really care to stop long enough to get to know you or I. And that's a problem, right? I look for people that I know that if I really needed something, or I needed advice, guidance, direction, input, needed, to have a door open for me, I would have a litany of people that would step up to the plate without question, no problem, and would respond in kind. And
yeah,
honestly, that's the biggest value.
and
Sorry.
also don't treat you like a paper sack. Okay, well, I've had my lunch. Throw this away.
Exactly.
Or, we all just have to be careful that we don't do that kind of thing. And there is a truth that there are some transactions that we make that are transactional, and we're not trying to build best buds forever, but to have a just a way of life that you're trying to build connections. And really, I'll have to admit, Ted Lasso and his little thing about
Yep.
being curious
Yep.
really hit me right between the eyes. And so almost every time I go anywhere outside, I say, okay, Scott, it's time to be curious. And I found that when I am genuinely interested, not interesting, but I'm curious, it changes the whole chemistry of the event.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, I
Yeah,
love
I
that.
love that Walt Whitman quote that he talks about, be curious, not judgmental, right? At the end of the day, that's where I think people get the connecting thing wrong. They're trying to fit you into a box. They're allowing the story in their head to define who you are or what you are, and they very rarely will invest any time or effort to be curious to get to know who you are. And I
Yeah.
think that's one of the big challenges that people have in networking today. Yeah, I'll get pushback all the time, and I'm sure somebody will listen to this and be like, "Ah, that sounds great if I actually had the time to do it." And the reality is that you do have the time. If you reinvest your efforts towards, hey, we could do the traditional networking dance, which is let's exchange business cards, let's have a follow-up call or a lunch, and let's talk to each other about our businesses. And maybe there's something that will come out of that. Very rarely does that actually happen. What I really want to do is I actually want to have lunch with Scott Carley. I want to learn about him as an individual. I want to learn about what led him down this path for his business, how he got inspired and motivated to write a book, and I want to know how he became such a badass speaker. Those are things that I really know that if I come with questions and I come with curiosity and I ask it in a respectful, authentic way, I'm going to learn some great stuff from you. I'm going to get some nuggets that will potentially inspire or motivate me to want to do even better in the work that I do.
Yeah. Yeah. And it builds the trust credit score that
Correct.
you and they have with each other. I was actually at a networking event last night, and it was a great crowd, and had a really great time. Of course, there's a lot of people there that I know, and we got into good conversations. And I had my book with me, and so I made some comments about that. But I met a financial advisor, and she was somebody who has been in the financial world a while, but not a financial advisor that long.
Mm-hmm.
She was, young by standards, and I looked around the room, and there were a couple of other heavy hitter financial advisors, and they just kind of come in and they just
Like
carry
they own the
a
place.
swag,
Yep.
and they have an aura and an intimidating presence, and I don't know that it's necessarily intentional, but it's just there. And so I kind of kept my eye on some of those. And as I was leaving, I had a great conversation with the young lady who had become financial advisor recently. And I felt urged to when I went by, I said, "Hey, I just want to say something to you. I know that when you come into a place like this and you look around the room and there's some heavy hitters here and some people who have been doing financial advising for years and years, and you feel like you're just kind of beginning, you've only been into your work a couple of years. Do not let them intimidate you, because nobody has what you have to offer. And there are people here that want exactly what you do in exactly the way that you give it. And the best thing that I could tell you tonight is be you. Just
Yep.
be you, and let you come out. And there is an attraction magnet that will pull the right people to you. And she got teary eyed and looked at me and said, "You had no idea that that's exactly what I was thinking, and how intimidated I'm feeling right now." And I said, "Well, maybe that's why I was supposed to come by and talk to you."
Yeah.
The kind of feeling I have about people. I want to help people where they are and help them get to that next level.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the trust score in a networking environment, you could have the greatest elevator pitch, you could be the most charismatic, the most powerful, create that aura like you were talking about. But if all you do is talk about your work, you're not actually making any kind of inroads to the person that you're talking to, right? You are blah, 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 like every other conversation they're going to have that night. What you did, however, was actually see the person. to see her for what she's doing, maybe recognizing a little bit of anxiety or angst that she might experience, and not being afraid to dive into that conversation pool and say, hey, I want you to know this is what I see, and this is where you add value and why you deserve to be here every bit as everybody, as well as everybody else, right? And the
Yeah.
reality that I think that you have is that's a gift, because you saw beyond the business card, you saw beyond her firm, you saw beyond her profession, you saw her as a person. And I think the more often that you can do that, the better. I remember when I was first growing my first company, I had people who are like, I don't know how you get into the deals that you get, because I did not like cold calling. I did not like doing all the traditional sales process. And I said, it's amazing when you don't go in with what's in it for me, but what's in it for them. When you go into every conversation thinking, what can I learn from this person? Where can I add value? Where can I help? And potentially, what can I do to leave them better from meeting me rather than worse? And I think when most people go to networking events, that they're pitching, 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 and they're hoping that, we're casting a bunch of lines out and that somebody is going to take the bait and go. That very rarely happens. It's like dating. You never close on the first date, right? You're looking for opportunities to just have another engaged conversation. And that generally, if you do it well at a networking event, ends up having nothing to do about what they do for work or what you do for work, has to do with that human heart to heart, belly to belly connection that you have. And then the permission to be granted another opportunity to have an audience with them. And that's where you start to lay that foundation. I think where most people lose their trust factor and their credit score takes their trust score takes a, kind of a nosedive, is they aren't confident enough in who they are as human beings. So they have to rely on pitching and promoting and pushing whatever it is they do professionally. And 9 times out of 10, people just don't want it. Like if you came to me and said, hey, I met this young lady and she's a fantastic financial advisor and she's, doing great things and, making great inroads in this career path. I may not necessarily resonate with that. And I may not necessarily say, wow, I just, jump over hoops to actually get to know her. But if you came in and said, man, I met this great gal, her name is Lisa. She's fairly new into the financial services space. She's going to networking events because she's looking to broaden her network. She's trying to connect with people so that she can actually have true, authentic, meaningful business conversations and maybe grow her business along the way, right? That's a totally different, approach. And I'd be like, send her my way. I'd be happy to talk to her.
Yeah, and that she has a mission. She's called a mission, a particular group of people that she really wants to help, and that's kind of where she was. So it was a cool experience. I was glad I was able to leave her with something, and I feel
You rippled her. You definitely rippled her right there. I mean, you
yeah,
created a positive experience for her, and I'm
yeah,
sure not one that she'll forget anytime soon.
yeah. That's exactly what we're supposed to be doing.
Sure.
Well, Steve,
Yeah.
here's what we both know. Every one of your clients, prospects, and decision makers are silently asking you and I a series of trust based questions before they ever sign a deal. And they
Yep.
may not say it out loud, but they're scanning for signals, for proof that that we are someone that they can collaborate with and work alongside. And that's exactly why I created the Trust Credit Score, a framework built around the 5 signals of trust. And those are your vibe check. I mean, people are checking out your vibe and your body language, your agenda and motives. Do you walk your talk? Can you actually deliver? And do you have receipts?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
today, I mean, we've already done it, but I'm putting you in the hot seat to answer maybe 7 or 8 questions your clients are already asking, whether they realize it or not, about what you do in the ripple world.
Yep.
So let's dive in. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm sweating it a little bit, but let's go.
Okay. Well, here's a big one. I really like this one. I like to start off here. What's the wildest high stakes challenge your team ever faced where failure would have been a nightmare?
Oh, so I come at this a little bit from a different perspective, right? So I have a software company and we work on large projects in the construction space. And that's where teamwork is essential. We're a software that actually helps people collaborate and engage with one another, but you still have to overcome some of the challenges that you have with human beings, right? And people don't say things when they should. So I feel like I deal with that on almost a daily basis because everything has both a time and a cost impact. And often people are too afraid to see or say when they see mistakes and or problems, small problems before they become big problems. So we try to get people to open up and have those conversations early and often. When it goes back to the Ripple world, I'll reflect back to a consulting engagement that I had with a company that was in serious financial trouble. And they were there because they grew very quickly and they took their eye off of what it really meant to support those clients that they were bringing on at such a fast pace. And they were starting to have major retention issues and major challenges. And it looked like they probably had about 3 to 6 months of runway. I got brought in because they were trying to figure out how to stop the bleeding. And I remember got brought in by a vice president. So I got to meet the CEO. And there was clearly an arrogance about what they had done, what they had grown, and what they had accomplished so far. And he was riding the crest of that wave thinking, man, look what we've done, yet losing people on the back end. And so I talked to him specifically about the front door and the back door. The front door being, we always protect our front. We lock it. We make sure everything's secure from the street. But if you don't protect your back end, right? If you leave your back door open and your gate unlocked, the chances of somebody potentially coming in and taking from you, stealing your stuff, taking your customers, there's a high probability. And let's not forget, because it's unsecured, losing a lot of critical and important employees. So when I started asking him, what's his relationship strategy for growing the business? Now, keep in mind, I knew they were losing business, not necessarily gaining at the level that they once had. And he said, we do a great job with our product and our service, and we expect customers to recognize that and reward us by telling other people to do it. And I asked him, who are your top 10 clients? And he said, he looks over at his direct report. He actually could not answer that question without getting some input. And I said, that's part of the problem, right? You don't know who your top clients are, which means they don't know you, and they may know your product or your service, but you're the CEO. And I would expect you and your entire executive leadership team to know exactly who those people are and be how actively. Oh, absolutely. Actively working to cultivate and grow those relationships. And I said, so let me ask you a question. You mentioned that you expect your clients to love your product and your service, and then you expect them to tell other people about it. Tell me how you train your people to do that. And I just got this blank stare, and he's like, oh, I don't know. I don't know how we do it. I just assume that happens. What they had was a major culture problem, and it started from the top. You have leaders that don't understand what it takes to actually cultivate and grow relationships with the folks that have already invested with them, let alone how to get out and be the great brand ambassador that they need to be in order to attract new clients. And so we started walking back through the process with this team, and they all recognized that they had sort of taken their foot off the pedal, right? They had pulled their foot off the accelerator and started to coast. And when they started to coast and there was no way to slow the backslide, they were finding themselves in a big way in a major struggle, right? So they were starting to lose clients in a big way. So we said there's a problem. We need to address this problem, and we need to figure out what we need to do to solve that problem. And part of that was helping the executive team understand that, hey, you're in the lofty perch. Time to come down off that lofty perch and start making some calls, having some conversations, going to lunch, and having some meetups with your clients, figuring out where things are working, but most importantly, focusing on what's not working so that you can avoid them leaving.
And you might actually get a little dirty.
Yeah, you absolutely. In fact,
your clothes dirty and having to work with your clients.
That's right. it's all about trying to get in, again, contact, relationships. All of it is a contact sport. You've got to figure out how to build those connections back, build back that trust, and continue to invest in that, that trust score, right? So we started really kind of starting at the top. My most important clients, I can't avoid, I've got to avoid them leaving. Then we started working on the mid-level clients, and then they had small level clients. And the CEO almost acted offended that I was saying, I need you to go have conversations with these folks as well. And he was like, that these guys bring very little revenue to us. And I said, well, then why do you even serve that market? Well, we want the money, right? We need the revenue. And I said, so they're just as important as your big clients. How many small clients make one medium client or one large client? And yet the more that they shifted, the more that they started to recognize they just didn't have a plan. They needed a plan. So we put one into place. We stopped the backsliding, we stopped the bleeding, and we actually turned it around. That CEO ended up leaving about a year and a half later because I think the board recognized that ultimately they needed new leadership. But at the end of the day, we made some huge inroads to solve a major problem, and they stayed in business.
Yeah, that's a huge culture shift.
Yes.
And sometimes, like you just said, people are blind to that. They don't see it. And hopefully when they do see it, they can do something about it. And if they don't have the skill set, you're the kind of guy to bring in to do that. So congratulations. Like, I'm glad that,
Thank you. I appreciate that.
glad that you helped reestablish the culture of that company. And for them to have a change in CEO is not the end of the world.
Right.
Who gets you there is not who will keep you there.
That's right.
So I love that. Well, that kind of brings on the question, and I think you sort of answered it, but your clients are still secretly asking these questions, and they're tied to the trust credit score. And one question is, do you actually listen and understand who I am and what I'm looking for? Or do you just add me to a list of your connections?
Well, yeah, you're talking to the guy that's anti-list, so you definitely aren't getting added to anywhere. But I'm a big believer that you have to dig way below the surface, right? Most of us are great at surface connections. We learn the basics about people, but we don't actually ask the question, what can I learn from this person? What do they have to teach me? Where could potentially take this potential connection, and how could I develop it into a relationship? It's a process, right? And not everybody's going to fit the bill. Not everybody has time to, throw everybody into that bucket. But the people that are most important to you personally or professionally are the people that you get on your list and say, okay, Scott Carley's there. What am I going to do to get to know something more about Scott? What am I going to do to make sure that Scott thinks of me when he has a problem or has a need, or there's an ask that he has that I might be able to answer? How do I build that relationship with him that goes probably at least in my perspective, much beyond what I do professionally, right? I always tell even my coaching clients that I work with, like, you will be shocked at how much work we will accomplish together. And that's the business side. But what I really want to strive here is that you walk away with a lifelong friend, someone that's there that knows you like the back of their hands, wants to support you, and wants to be there for you in both the good times and the bad. And when you can do that, every time you show up, every time you demonstrate a commitment to that, every time you just leverage what you learned in the last meeting and you're bringing it back out to talk about as kind of your dialogue jumping off point for the next meeting, it shows that you cared, you paid attention, and you listened. And that trust score, I think, increases incrementally over time. But you have to do it. It does take work. But when you're committed to it, you walk away with both a rock solid customer base, but more importantly, you walk away with a rock solid group of friends.
Oh yeah, I love that, and that is a big deal. Like you just said, digging deeper, going further, having a chance to get to know people and remembering things. Well, I just hate to confess this, but I have to work really hard at remembering people's names. And what I'm trying to do is dig deep enough that now I make a connection to that name so that they're easier to remember. And I have a reason. There's something that is attached to that name that now, oh, I know a guy, I know a gal, I know somebody who does this, and they develop a reputation.
Yep.
That this is uh, an interesting question. The one I'm about to give you right now is an
Okay.
interesting question because it really tags right into what you just said. Are your connections high quality and value aligned, or just busy networking noise? And I am so curious how you're going to answer that.
I love that. I tell the folks that I work with on a regular basis that you occasionally have to cull the herd, right? Just because you connected with somebody on LinkedIn or Facebook or any of the platforms, are they serving you and are you serving them? And if you look at somebody's name on LinkedIn and they're one of your contacts and you're like, I have no clue how I met this person. We've obviously never engaged. We've never done anything. Those are the folks that you need to quietly remove from your network. They don't go away. These tools make it easy to go look them up later if you want, but you don't actually have to have them in your direct line of sight. Many of these people, especially the power networkers, if you invite them into your network, they just create so much ancillary noise to the point that people get frustrated and almost sick of logging into these platforms to see all of their stuff or to be consumed constantly, by their efforts to gain my attention. But there's never any investment backwards. Like, how do they get to know me, and what are they trying to do to help and solve a problem for me or add value to me? So I'm a big believer that you want to only look for quality connections. You want to look for people that it may take some time for them to come around to see, hey, you're not trying to do some Jedi mind trick just to get them to buy from you or to believe in you or trust you. That's the kind of person you are, and that you're looking for high quality people to do the same, to build a network of people that have that high value. They've got a certain level of ethics. They have a certain, values that they aspire to, support and be a part of. And they drive everything in the service of other people. When you have a network like that, I'll almost say it's bulletproof from anything that could happen, because no matter what occurs, an unexpected job change, an emergency family or personal situation that you might need some guidance or help on, professional needs, I'm launching a new product or I need new early adopter customers. These are all people who are like, sign me up, dude. I am there. I will help you and I will support you any way I can. And I am blessed, and I know you are as well, to know that I've got a tremendous amount of people in my network that their trust value score that they look at for me and what I look at for them is very high, because we know we'll be there for each other in a pinch.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I've discovered that people that I meet, wherever it is, when we say networking events, but this, wherever it is, I'm in a 55 plus neighborhood. I'm surrounded by people who are in their late 50s, early 60s, and they've retired. And so for some reason, my porch has become uh, a place where people come and hang out.
Yeah.
In the evenings, there'll be 5 or 6 golf carts that show up, and my neighbors will come over and we'll smoke a cigar, maybe sip some whiskey or something, and getting to know them. At first, you're a neighbor, and you live here, and you're from Arizona, you're from LA, you're from you know Utah, you're from wherever. But I found that wherever I am, when I dig deeper, I'm conscious. I'm looking for what's here. And sometimes, you're digging through the dirt. And a person, if you ask enough questions, you find some gold,
Yep.
and you find gold that was hidden. And that doesn't mean gold that, oh, I found the land. They're beneficial for me. But instead, you have found somebody that has some real gifts to the world, and they have done some things and are still doing some things. I went golfing with on a foursome. We used to go golfing, during the summer, and we'd shoot 9 holes. And there was a group of guys that went, and we had a lot of fun. And I'm not a great golfer, but I love to golf. And there's this one guy though. His name's Michael. And when Michael, he hits a little better than some of us, and sometimes he'll hit first. But after we hit off of the fairway, this guy has been watching where our ball goes.
Hmm.
I'm what you're called a one sleeve golfer. And what that means is a round of golf, I usually only lose one sleeve of balls. So
Good.
I'm trying to be a lot better than that. But Michael, on his golf cart, he will go left and right, and he will go into the rough and find those, and he will bring them to us because we usually play best ball. And when I watched him for 2 or 3 games, that was his motive and his intention and his credibility. His score for me went way up.
Sure.
I had a tremendous amount of appreciation, but you have to look for those things. Those things don't always just show up. You have to look for them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a big believer that when people are busy showing you who they are, believe them, right? If you pay attention, a lot of times you'll find, and actually it's kind of funny you bring up golf because it is probably one of the best group activities that you can go to, golf with another three people, and you can see what kind of integrity and what kind of values they possess without actually asking them. How they conduct themselves, they may give you a little ribbing, but they're there to enjoy the time, the camaraderie, the fellowship. Or do they take it uber serious? Do they kick their ball out of the rough when nobody's looking? Do they do certain things because they're trying to better themselves? They go through, and I see those people all the time, not just always on the golf course, but it's just easier to spot. Those are people that look through the filter of what's in it for me, right? What am
Yeah.
I going to gain here? What can I get from this person? What value will I um, derive from our time together? They are often people that only talk about work. They don't give a whole lot of insight as to who they are as individuals because they wrap their entire identity in their professional career. And therefore, they're in pitch mode almost all the time, or they're in self promotion mode all the time. You and I know a few of these people. The reality is when you see those folks, it's kind of like, Danger Will Robinson. That'll definitely date me, right? From the, Lost in Space days. But, warning, 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 because when they are doing that, they're actually showing you how they're going to be probably point forward. That's not to mean that you might not meet somebody that you think, even though they're acting that way, there's still something there. I've got a few people in my network that I probably overly harshly, prejudged, and I challenged myself to validate what I thought was my impression if it was actually true. Most of the time, I'm pretty accurate. Sometimes people will surprise you. People act a certain way because they feel like they have to. You go to a networking event, it's a perfect example. Networking events are about putting on airs. It's about status. It's about power. It's about really trying to impress you with my witty, elevator pitch. All boring, all crap, right? At the end of the day, it doesn't show me who you are as an individual. In fact, I almost always refuse to ask that question. So, what do you do? Because I don't care. I want to know you as an individual. And if there's enough there that piques my curiosity, then I will eventually get there to find out what you do. But if you're like the person that sits up and has to self-promote yourself or make other people feel bad because you need to be the funniest guy in the room or on the golf course, or you're going to act in a non-integrity kind of way, those are the people I stay clear of. And so I think that, you look for these things, pay attention to the signs that are given. If you still feel like someone, maybe isn't quite being 100% themselves, give them permission to be that. Like, hey, look, I know we're at this networking event. I'm tired of the elevator pitches. What about you? Tell me about
Yeah.
yourself. How'd you end up in Austin? What do you like to do on the weekends? Find a way to get them. The power networkers, that short circuits their brain. They can't communicate or have a conversation at all. But people that are really authentic, that know that they were kind of being a certain way, putting on the airs, they will like ease into that conversation in a big way because it's such a welcome change from everything that they expect or experience at a networking event.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And I also have found that, like on the trust credit score, nobody gets a 10. I have 5 categories and you score 1 to 10, one being I don't trust you at all, 10, I can trust you completely. But nobody gets a 10, and rarely will people get a 9 until I have known you for
Yep.
maybe 60 or 90 days. because it's built not on what you say, it's built on behavior.
Yep.
I
What
want
you
to
do, how
catch
you show
you
up.
when you're out of character. I
Yep.
want to catch you when you're not putting on the show, and see what you're like, because when it comes down to it, that's part of what I'm going to have to live with. Body language is 55% of our communication, and we send so many signals through our body language and our appearance. There's there's an event that I go to once a month, and it's at a really nice country club in Austin, and they white linen tables, and they serve a pretty good meal. Often it's not rubbery chicken, but it's a pretty good meal. But it's interesting because there is an etiquette that nobody eats until everyone at your table has been served the plate.
Yep.
And so somebody would say, "Well, that is no big deal." Yes, it
Very big deal. Yep.
because it sends a message to you about some characteristics that that person has.
Yep.
Just how they're dressed does send a message. So yeah, all of those things are right. But that brings me to the next question, and
Hey, but what before you move on, let me just throw one other thing out. Could that environment, there's one other trick that you can actually incorporate into that might be useful for your audience is once the plate is set down, look at the people that actually automatically reach for the salt or the pepper without actually tasting.
yes,
Yeah, there is something unique there because you often find that people that have to be in control or sort of become authoritative or dictatorial, they're often people that think without even tasting this, I'm going to be able to improve it. And there's a lot to be said about these little nuances that you pick up and you pay attention to. Am I suggesting that you don't have a conversation with the guy that salts his steak? No, I'm not saying that. I am saying that it just gives you a data point and there's a validation there that you'd be like, that's interesting. It's a little note. I'm going to pay attention to it. I'm going to see how that manifests in future, conversations or whatever. But it is a fun one to apply because,
that is spot
yeah,
on.
yeah.
Several years ago, I was speaking for a great friend of mine, and at his house, he cooked dinner, cooked a steak. And it was took a lot of pride in cooking that steak, and it was anyway. He served me my steak, and everybody had theirs, and we sat down to eat. And he said, "Do you need any steak sauce?" And I looked up at him, and I smiled, and I said, "Are you kidding? There's no way I put steak sauce on this." And he smiled back at me and he said, "It's a good thing because I'd have hit you over the head if you did." Because and it was delicious.
Yeah.
He had cooked it just right. But yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
Now, so here's a challenge for you, Scott. You could go out there and say, I hadn't thought about your steak in a long time, but we were talking about it on a podcast today, and we need to get together for some more steaks. When are you cooking? And you will create a ripple for him today in a big, big way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So that kind of brings me to the question, do you have the discernment and social intelligence to match people as well?
Not always, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm introverted and shy, so to get me to warm up is sometimes hard.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah,
That's
it
hard
is.
to believe.
Yeah, it is. It's always been my Achilles heel, right? I I'd like to think that I have the discernment to sort of try to make everybody comfortable around me, but I'm very introverted, so sometimes as introverts we come across as aloof or that we have an air of superiority because we don't talk. Believe it or not, introverts are actually the best networkers because they don't talk. They are actually observers. They're very good at asking good questions, but they're really, really good at two skills: listening and hearing. People are like, well, what do you mean? Listening to the words that Scott shares is one thing. Hearing the meaning, the emotion, everything behind it, that's a completely different skill set. And so oftentimes I have been told that I come across as aloof because I'm so focused on paying attention to what other people are saying that oftentimes I'm not very contributory in a conversation. I'm really good one-on-one. I'm good in a very small group, but a networking event, I'm out of my depth a lot of times because people are just They're posers in a lot of ways. And I'm trying to figure out who the biggest posers are and stay away from them, and who are there because they're more like me, that they're there going through the motions because they have to, or their boss demands it of them, but they don't really want to be there. And then there's the people that are just disassociated, but they're there because they need to prove that they were there. That's my tribe. Those are the people I'll go have a conversation with, the people that aren't engaging. I always tell people, when you walk into a networking room, there's going to be a core group of the stars, right? The people that know one another, and they're slapping each other on the back, and the conversation has, a buzz to it. Then there'll be people on the peripheral, but there's always people on the outer rim. And the outer rims, there's four corners to every rim. And what I always do is I find the one person that's sitting there eating that rubber chicken, or, sipping on that drink, or having that coffee. They will be off in a corner somewhere, and I'll walk up to them and I'll say, I have a running bet with myself as to which of us is having a worse time at this event, you or me. That always breaks the ice. It always gets attention. And you know what? They love it, because at the end of the day, it's not some guy coming up and saying, hey, let me tell you about my business, and let me tell you why you want to listen and why you want to buy today, right? None of that crap. We're just connecting on a human level. And the cool thing is, once you've established a little bit of that rapport and start to add your trust score, your trust credit score, there's going to be three other corners in the room. So you go find the other three people, and before you know it, you have your tribe. So the best networking I have done is always on the outer rim, and some of my most profitable connections have come from doing just that. And so I often find that a lot of times when you show up and you just come across as an authentic individual, but you're not going with the flow, you're not doing what everybody else is doing, you're doing it different, you will walk out of there with a much more profitable evening than the vast majority of those people will.
Yes, and I love that story and that strategy that you have, and I think that's funny. Which one of us is having the worst times here? That is so funny, because there are some people who absolutely despise going to those kind of events, even conferences. I mean, they go alone, they sit alone, they eat alone, and I do like to connect with them. I can't spend all my time with them, but I do like to connect with them. It is true. We do business. We exchange business with people we know, that we like, and that we trust. And knowing somebody, well, what's your name? And getting to know them. Oh, and finding out they have more than a professional life. They may actually have a social life or a family or something else. So we get to know them, and then we like them. Where like, I don't know how to explain like other than chemistry.
Sure.
There's some chemistry that we sometimes do or don't have with some people. I found out at my Provisors group the other day that there are 4 other people that are motorcycle riders. That's immediate chemistry.
That's right there. That's the connection point. Yep.
Yeah, and so now, whenever we get together, I'm asking them about their bike or where they rode or whatever they do. So we do business with people we know, we like, and that we trust. And just looking for those trust signals, there's no shame in that. As a matter of fact, it's just part of our responsibility to be sending out the right signals and to be able to read the signals that are there, so that we get the good answers. I'm sure you've been in a situation where you meet somebody and you're saying in your head, something is off. And I just don't know what it is. I'm not feeling good about this. I don't know what it is. And I found, for me, and it's why I developed the trust credit score, is it gives people a way to score. Okay, all right, what's their agenda here? What are their motives and their agenda, and what kind of body language, and are they even built for this? What's their values and their moral? Do they have their receipts? And so it just gives you a way to start scoring something, and then you can make better decisions about what you want to do.
Yep.
Well, I know that for you to build the kind of business and organization you have that comes into a company and creates that kind of culture shift that you talked about earlier in the podcast, what kind of team do you have of like community curators or relational strategists or good CRM programs or event planners and bridge builders? Who are the team members that you use to help you create the ripple effect and the culture in companies?
Yeah, what's really kind of unique for me is because I have these different ventures, I get to wear different hats on a given day, right? And when it comes to rippling, anybody that's going to come to work for me, you might have come to work for my software company and not know a thing about the ripple, but you're going to learn it because it's part of our DNA, it's part of our structure. Almost everyone could step into my role if they needed to represent me and the company and the approach. Um, Through kind of the Ripple lens, right? Whether we're selling software or professional services, or it's my coaching, it's consulting. I've been very blessed with people that get it and understand it. I've always had, um, I've always had a knack for um, picking the hard, challenging people, people that have gone through difficult times in their lives, people that are, I would say, not the most relatable, not the most easy to get along with. And I have almost nearly a perfect batting average to show these people who have often had many unfortunate circumstances that led them down the path that they went, or they've been burned in the past, and so they're pretty jaded. Helping them understand that this is a much better way to live. It's a much better way to approach not only how you go about bumping through life, but really where you spend most of your time, which is at work and being of service and being of value to the people that either you work directly with or the people that you work on behalf of. And so I've been very, very blessed to have some great team that that comes in, understands, gets what I do, and they don't roll the eyes, right? When we hear the word ripple, like, hey, I was rippling. My COO for my software company is a really, he's a hardened Army vet. Didn't have a lot of civilian friends. Certainly was never expecting to be a COO of a software company, but he didn't start there. He started as my customer service guy, and I saw something in him. And he got to see what I do and how I do what I do with customers and clients and prospects. And I remember one time shortly after he started with me, I was helping this guy that we clearly were not a good fit for. And I was giving this guy resources. He's like, why would you do that? Like, that's their job. They can go do that. Why would you waste time when somebody's not going to pay you for that? Because you never know the ripple you create, where that's going to ripple out and how it'll ripple back to you. And I remember him looking at me like, this is like some, kumbaya crap, right? And believe it or not, that client came back to me, left that firm that he was with, came back to us 2 years later, and has been a client ever since.
Wow.
So when you see those circumstances kind of come full circle, now he's probably my chief evangelist about rippling. He tells clients, hey, look, I don't want to talk about features or capabilities. I want to know what problems you're trying to solve. I want to know where we can match up to align to help you. The tool is obviously just that, but you've got to have an understanding and an appreciation and a philosophy and a repeatable, proven process that we can help you establish before any tool that you put into place is actually going to work. So let us get to know you. Let us get to know your team. And he is like one of my probably proudest accomplishments, because he was one that was like, I have a high BS meter, right? I don't believe anybody, don't believe in anything. And now he is probably one of the most, relational guys that you could ever imagine. And it just trickles on down throughout the team. For Ripple specifically, I have a host of coaches and professional speakers like yourself that I often will engage in corporate engagements, or team training opportunities, things that I know can benefit them and raise their profile, and obviously help spread and evangelize their work in the organizations I get to speak at or I get to train for. And so I love to spread that word or that message through other people as well, because I know when I do it, not only am I adding value to the client that's hired me, but I'm exposing them to great people that bring different perspectives and different approaches. And that's why I'm super excited about your book, right? Finding some avenues for you and I to work together so that we can really go out and create bigger and bigger ripples for the people that we serve. And so
Yeah, yeah.
I'm very blessed there.
That's what you and I are doing right now. And through our
Yeah,
podcast, we are creating ripples, and
we are.
you
We
know,
are, absolutely.
sometimes I want to create a tsunami, so that it washes up on some shores and people can get exactly what they need, not in a bad way, in a good way. Yeah, I love that about you. You are the ripple effect. It's not
Thank
like
you.
Well, we have this thing in our business. It's called, the ripple effect. You are it. It doesn't matter where you go. You're rippling and sending out so much good stuff, Steve.
Thank you. I appreciate coming from you. That means a lot. I really appreciate it. I do
Oh
work
yeah,
hard at it because it's important to me. I just think this is the way that we should be living our lives and we should be operating our businesses.
yeah. I agree completely. So, as we're wrapping it up, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Oh, well, just that I appreciate your friendship and the trust that you place to even invite me on to your podcast. You and I have a really fun friendship and professional support of one another, which I've really enjoyed. The thing I'd say is that with the work that you're doing right now, I think it's such important work because at the end of the day, I think even just having that score to understand how to evaluate people and look towards where you can get the most out of that connection or where to build that relationship, or even you've got people that you've known for a long time, but you actually kind of stalled out. You don't know where to go. Going through your system and understanding where they fall on your trust, credit score, where they fall in the trust credit score is a great place to say, I don't know this person as well as I'd like to. What am I going to do about it? Or I thought I really knew this person, but we've done some things that really kind of shook my trust. How do I regain that? What do I need to do to get that relationship back on track? Or maybe I've got, people that are on my team that I just haven't taken the time to get to know. And how can I trust them if I haven't gotten to know them? So how do I evaluate them? And we got to start somewhere, right? Part of that is going through your test and going through that evaluation, but the other part is showing up to say, what do I got to do to make, this situation the best it can be? And I've got to show that person that I'm committed to their success. I'm committed to helping them achieve whatever their personal or professional ambitions might be, and playing some role, maybe small, maybe big, in creating as many positive ripples for them as I possibly can. And I think what I love about what you're doing is you're putting trust front and center, which is an essential element for any connection to transform into a relationship anyway. And I think at the end of the day, going about it in a way that allows people to think about, I could do a little better. I need to show up and be a little more authentic, or I need to be a little bit more aligned with where my values are, how I show up in certain circumstances and how I display my ethics. How do I show my character and how do I show what's important to me? And how do I go attract other people that are like that? Maybe not exactly like me, because that would be boring. How do I get more people that just kick me in the hindquarters to make me a better person? And so for me, that's what the ripple is all about. We might have come together because of a business transaction, or we might have met each other at a networking event, but it's really up to us to be curious and figure out what else can we learn from this person? Where else can we take this? And where can we drive this potential relationship to be a mutually beneficial arrangement for us both?
Yeah, and why not?
Yeah.
Why not build relationships? Find people out there that have gold inside of them. Sometimes you have to dig a little bit to find it,
Yep.
and build those relationships. I am, one of the things that I have said and have done 3 or 4 times if I've upgraded my peer group.
Yep.
And some of that has been a natural progression. Some of it has just been an intentional progression to be intentional about my peer group and the people that I'm let influencing me and the people that I want to influence. I find that uncomfortable, but I also find it very valuable to know when I walk into a room, there are people there who intimidate me. And I want to be in a room where I'm intimidated, because what that means is they're pulling me up.
Sure.
And then I want to do the same thing. I want to pull people up, not look down. I want to pull them up. But you and I share a lot of the same values and help creating culture. And I love the way you do it. I love the way that I'm getting to do it. And that's really why I was glad to be on your show. Thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you.
And how can people get in touch with you? How do they reach you?
Yeah, well, you can follow me pretty much on any social platform at Ripple On with 2 P's. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. You can find me on YouTube. I've got just search up Steve Harper, The Ripple Effect. You'll find my videos on my channel. Love to have you as a subscriber for sure. I've got a podcast, as Scott mentioned, the Ripple Effect podcast with Steve Harper. It's on all major platforms. Continues to blow me away, the quality and level of guests that I'm getting for the show, but I've really enjoyed getting an opportunity to highlight and share the stories of other entrepreneurs and other business leaders that are out there creating really positive ripples. And then, of course, my website is ripplecentral.com. So you can go there. You can kind of see all that we've got to offer: coaching, consulting, speaking. We also have a community called The Pond. It's free to join. It's not necessarily a networking group per se, but it's actually an opportunity for you to continue to practice and hone your connecting skill sets. So encourage you guys to come check it out and reach out to me if there's anything I can do to support you, your team. You're struggling in some capacity to try and figure out how to recover relationships that have gotten off track somehow, and you just don't know how to get them back there. I love any and all opportunities to help people understand the importance of building connections the right way and developing truthful, authentic relationships, and ones that can last you a lifetime.
Well, thank you for being my guest today. I love the value that you bring and the ripple effect that you sent over to my life. Not waves, but ripples. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And to all of our guests today, if you want to grow through the power of building better connections, please contact Steve Harper. I mean, this guy has it together. He's not a novice at this. He's been doing it for a while. And whatever you think may be keeping you from doing it, just contact Steve and visit with him. And I think that you'll find it extremely beneficial. So if you're listening and thinking, boy, I'd crush it in the hot seat. Well, you're absolutely right. So let's talk. Head over to calltheenergizer.com to book a quick call with me, and we'll see if the hot seat is a right fit for you. Or if you'd like to bring me into your company or conference to run a live hot seat session and energize your people and elevate your trust credit score, let's talk about that too. Because when trust goes up, everything goes up. So until next time, stay energized and stay trusted. Thanks for being here.